It all started on a cold, dreary Monday morning when my boss introduced me to Jack, the man who would supposedly help me with the most critical report of my career. I was already overwhelmed by the pressure from work, and the last thing I needed was some stranger stepping into my carefully controlled world. From the moment he walked in, I felt uneasy. His calm demeanor and charming smile seemed too perfect, almost rehearsed. My instinct screamed at me that something wasn't right. After all, I'd been betrayed before, used by men who only cared about climbing the corporate ladder on my back. I couldn't let that happen again, so I decided to test him. If he truly wanted to help, he would have to prove his worth. That's why I gave him an impossible task: copying every single document I had worked on over the past 2 years, all within 3 days. It was absurd, even for someone as organized as me, but I didn't care. I wanted to see if he would crumble under the weight of my demands or if there was more to him than met the eye. To my surprise, he accepted without hesitation. His eyes didn't falter. His voice didn't waver. He simply said, "It shall be done." But deep down, I remained suspicious. There had to be a reason why he was so eager to assist me. Was it because he admired my skills? Or was it something darker? A hidden agenda lurking beneath his polished exterior? Every time he smiled or offered help, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. What if this was just another ploy to use me? The thought made my blood run cold. Still, I couldn't deny that part of me was curious. Maybe, just maybe, he was different. But curiosity can be dangerous, especially when trust is the hardest thing to give. At first, I was convinced that Jack's only motive for being around me was to climb the corporate ladder. After all, wasn't that what every man in my life had done? They came with sweet words and promises, only to use me as a stepping stone for their own ambitions. This time, though, something about Jack unsettled me more than usual. His persistence wasn't just professional, it felt personal. Every day, he would find ways to insert himself into my routine, whether it was offering help on tasks I didn't even know I needed or leaving small gifts on my desk. A cup of coffee here, a handwritten note there. Each gesture seemed calculated to break down the walls I had built so carefully over the years. But I refused to let my guard down. "He's just trying to impress the boss," I told myself repeatedly. "Don't fall for it." Yet, despite my resistance, his actions began to chip away at my defenses. One particularly grueling night, I found myself alone in the office, surrounded by piles of documents and deadlines looming like storm clouds. My stomach growled from skipping dinner, but I ignored it, determined to push through. That's when Jack appeared out of nowhere, carrying a bag of takeout and 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said casually, setting the food down beside me. His voice was calm, almost soothing, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. For a moment, I wanted to lash out, to accuse him of meddling where he didn't belong, but the sight of the warm meal stopped me. It wasn't just the food, it was the thoughtfulness behind it. No one had ever gone out of their way to care for me like that before. Not since, well, not since anyone who mattered. Still, I couldn't shake the suspicion gnawing at the back of my mind. Was this some elaborate scheme? Did he think feeding me would make me trust him? I eyed him warily as I picked at the food, half expecting him to drop some bombshell revelation. But instead, he simply sat there, chatting about mundane things, the weather, the latest news, random office gossip, as if we were old friends catching up. The longer he stayed, the harder it became to maintain my icy demeanor. There was an authenticity to him that I hadn't encountered in a long time, and it terrified me. What if he really meant what he said? What if his kindness wasn't a mask, but a genuine reflection of who he was? These questions haunted me long after he left that night. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to entertain the possibility that maybe, just maybe, Jack wasn't like the others. But deep down, I knew better than to trust too quickly. Every man who had ever entered my life had left scars, and I wasn't ready to add another to the collection. Still, I couldn't deny the tiny spark of hope igniting within me, a fragile flame that whispered, "What if?" As the days passed, I found myself opening up to Jack more than I ever intended. It wasn't just his persistence, it was the way he listened, really listened, without judgment or interruption. One evening, after hours of working side by side, he asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Why do you work so hard, Gwen?" His voice was soft, almost hesitant, but his eyes were steady, searching mine for an answer. For a moment, I wanted to brush it off with a sarcastic remark, but something about his sincerity stopped me. Instead, I sighed and began to tell him things I hadn't shared with anyone, not even my closest friends. I told him about Mark, a former colleague who had once been my everything. He was charming, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in me, at least at first. But as time went on, I realized his affection was nothing more than a calculated move to climb the corporate ladder. He used me, manipulated me into sharing confidential information, and then discarded me like yesterday's trash when he got what he wanted. The betrayal cut deep, leaving scars that refused to heal. Every time I thought about it, my chest tightened with anger and humiliation. But that wasn't the whole story. I revealed to Jack that I was an orphan, abandoned at birth and raised in foster homes where love was scarce and trust was non-existent. Growing up, I learned early on that people only cared about what they could take from me. My foster parents, classmates, even supposed friends, they all left eventually, one way or another. Loneliness became my constant companion, shaping who I am today. Over time, I built walls around myself, vowing never to let anyone get close enough to hurt me again. Work became my sanctuary, the only place where I felt in control. In the office, numbers made sense, deadlines were predictable, and success was measurable. Unlike people, tasks didn't lie or betray me. They didn't pretend to care only to stab me in the back later. So I poured every ounce of my energy into my career, determined to prove that I didn't need anyone else. But somewhere along the way, this obsession turned into a prison of its own. My rigid focus alienated me from others, making me seem cold and unapproachable. And while I convinced myself that I was happy, deep down, I knew I was anything but. Jack listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. Instead, he simply said, "Thank you for trusting me." Those words hit me harder than I expected. Trust, something I had guarded so fiercely, was now resting precariously in the hands of a man I barely knew. Yet for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope. What if Jack truly was different? What if he saw me not as a tool or a stepping stone, but as a person worthy of love and respect? The thought terrified me, but also intrigued me. The day I finally completed the report, I felt an odd mix of relief and emptiness. It was as if a chapter of my life had closed, but another loomed uncertainly ahead. Just as I was packing up to leave, Jack appeared at my desk, holding 2 tickets to a fancy restaurant downtown. "Let me take you out to celebrate," he said with that confident smile of his. My immediate reaction was to decline, sharply. firmly. I don't have time for this. I snapped, avoiding his gaze. But Jack didn't back down. Instead, he leaned in slightly, his voice soft yet insistent. Gwen, you've worked tirelessly on this. You deserve a break. Please. For a moment, I hesitated. His words struck a chord deep within me. Did I really deserve a break? The thought seemed foreign, almost indulgent. Yet there was something in his tone, a sincerity I couldn't ignore, that made me reconsider. Against every instinct screaming caution, I agreed. As we walked to the restaurant, silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken tension. The dinner itself started off awkwardly. I kept glancing at my watch, ready to bolt at any moment. But then, halfway through the meal, Jack looked directly at me, his eyes intense and unwavering. "You're extraordinary, Gwen," he began, his voice low and earnest. "Your intelligence, your strength, it's inspiring, and yet—" He paused, searching for the right words. "You're so much more than just a brilliant employee. Have you ever stopped to realize how beautiful you are?" His words hit me like a tidal wave. No one had ever spoken to me like that before. Men saw me as either a tool or a threat, never as someone who could be admired for both her mind and her heart. I felt my cheeks flush, a mixture of embarrassment and disbelief washing over me. Was he being genuine? Or was this another ploy to win me over? My stomach churned with uncertainty. As the night wore on, I found myself wrestling with conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to believe him, to let go of the walls I'd built around myself and embrace the possibility of love. But another part, louder and more cynical, reminded me of all the times I'd been betrayed. Could I risk opening my heart again only to have it shattered? Every fiber of my being screamed no. Yet here was Jack, patiently chipping away at my defenses, making me question everything I thought I knew about trust and vulnerability. By the end of the evening, I was exhausted, not from work, but from the internal battle raging inside me. As we stood outside the restaurant, the cool night air brushing against my skin, Jack turned to me. "Thank you for tonight," he said softly. "I hope you know I mean every word I said." For a brief second, I considered telling him everything. The fear, the doubts, the scars that still lingered. But instead, I simply nodded, unable to find the words. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized something terrifying. Jack had awakened feelings in me that I had long buried. And now I wasn't sure if I could, or even wanted to, turn them off. The morning that shattered my world began like any other, until it didn't. I was at my desk, sipping coffee and reviewing files, when my boss stormed into the office, his face red with fury. "Where's the report?" he barked, slamming his fists on the table. My heart skipped a beat. The report? It was supposed to be safe. It was under Jack's protection. Or so I thought. Before I could respond, my boss leaned in closer, his voice dropping to an icy whisper. "There's a spy in this building, a mole sent by our competitors. And guess what? He's sitting right next to you." My blood ran cold. No, it couldn't be true. But as the words sank in, everything clicked into place. The late-night meetings, the relentless charm, the way he seemed to know exactly what I needed before I even asked. Jack wasn't just my assistant. He was a traitor. My hands trembled as I tried calling him. Once, twice, 100 times. Each unanswered ring felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my chest. Panic clawed at me, suffocating me. How could I have been so blind, so stupid? When Jack finally appeared later that day, calm and composed as if nothing had happened, I lost control. "You bastard!" I screamed, my voice echoing through the empty hallway. "You used me! You ruined my life!" Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't care. All the pain, the betrayal, the humiliation, it all came crashing down in that moment. "How could you do this to me? After everything we shared?" My voice broke, choked by sobs. For the first time, Jack looked shaken. His usual confidence faltered, replaced by guilt and desperation. "Gwen, please listen," he pleaded, stepping toward me. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Yes, I was sent here to steal the report, but then I met you. I fell in love with you. That's why I couldn't go through with it." "Don't lie to me," I spat, backing away from him. "You're just saying that to save yourself." "No, Gwen, it's the truth." His voice cracked, raw with emotion. "I'm willing to give up everything. For you. My mission, my career, my life, it's all meaningless without you. Don't you see, you changed me." But I couldn't believe him. Not now. Not after everything I'd been through. Every man who had ever entered my life had left scars, and Jack was no different. Only this time, the wound cut deeper than ever before. My trust, my career, my heart, all destroyed in one fell swoop. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear. Instead, I stood there, frozen, as the weight of his betrayal crushed me. I stood there, torn between two worlds, the safe, predictable life I had built for myself and the terrifying, unknown future Jack offered. My mind screamed at me to walk away, to protect what little remained of my shattered heart. But my heart, it ached in a way that no amount of logic could soothe. "How can I trust you again?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "You betrayed me, Jack. You destroyed everything I worked for." "I know," he said, his voice breaking under the weight of guilt. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you let me. Gwen, I'm begging you. One last chance. That's all I ask." His eyes locked onto mine, desperate yet sincere. "I'll quit my job, leave this city, do whatever it takes to prove how much I love you. Without you, none of it matters. Not the career, not the success, nothing." His words hung in the air, heavy with promise and peril. Could I really take such a risk? Every instinct told me to run, to shield myself from further pain. Yet deep down, I knew I couldn't deny the truth. I loved him too. The thought of losing him forever was unbearable, like trying to breathe underwater. But fear gripped me tightly, whispering cruel reminders of past betrayals. What if he hurt me again? What if loving him cost me even more than I'd already lost? For hours, I paced back and forth, replaying every moment we'd shared. His laughter, his touch, the way he looked at me as though I were the only woman in the world. It all came rushing back. And then there was the other side. The loneliness, the emptiness of a life without connection. Was I willing to sacrifice love for safety? Or was I brave enough to choose him, despite the scars he'd left behind? Finally, I stopped pacing and turned to face him. "If I give you another chance," I began, my voice steady but laced with warning, "you have to promise me one thing. You will never betray me again. Not ever. I swear it," he replied instantly, his voice raw with emotion. You're my everything, Gwen. I won't lose you. The moment of truth came sooner than I expected. After hours of silence and soul searching, I looked Jack in the eye and gave him my ultimatum. If you want me to forgive you, I said firmly, you'll have to confess everything to our company and to your employers. No more secrets. For a second, he hesitated, his jaw tightening as if weighing the gravity of my demand. Then, without a word, he nodded. What happened next shocked everyone, including me. The following morning, Jack walked into the rival company's headquarters, unarmed and unafraid. He stood before their executives, admitting every detail of his mission, the lies, the betrayal, the stolen trust, and vowed never to engage in espionage again. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly, betraying the enormity of what he was sacrificing. When news of his confession reached our office, jaws dropped. My boss, who had been ready to fire me, now shook my hand, apologizing for doubting my integrity. Jack's bold move not only restored my reputation, but also proved that his love for me was worth risking everything for. That evening, as we packed up our desks together, I couldn't help but feel a strange mix of relief and disbelief. Why did you do it? I asked softly, breaking the silence between us. Jack turned to me, his eyes filled with determination. Because you're my reason now, he replied simply. Everything else, the job, the success, it's meaningless without you. Hand in hand, we walked out of the building where so much pain and redemption had unfolded. It wasn't just the end of one chapter, it was the beginning of another. Together, we chose to face an uncertain future, knowing that true love isn't about perfection. It's about sacrifice, trust, and taking leaps of faith. As we stepped into the unknown, I realized something profound. Sometimes risking everything is the only way to gain what truly matters. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.